Keanu Reeves never imagined that one ordinary evening would turn into the moment that tested everything he believed about family, kindness, and what it means to truly open your heart to a stranger. It all started with a phone call, just as the sun was setting behind the hills, painting his quiet Los Angeles neighborhood in warm gold and soft shadows. Keanu was standing by the kitchen sink, rinsing off the last dinner plate. The house was calm, the hum of the fridge the only sound breaking the silence. His daughter, Luna, had texted him hours ago saying she'd be studying at a friend's house. He trusted her. Luna was 16, but carried herself with a quiet strength and a deep sense of empathy that reminded him so much of her mother. The kind of girl who couldn't walk past a stray cat without trying to help. The phone rang. Breaking through his thoughts, he reached for it with wet hands, glancing at the screen. It was Luna. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Everything okay?" There was a pause, longer than usual. He could hear voices in the background, muffled. "Tense, Luna?" he asked again, worry creeping into his voice. "Dad," she said, her voice low but steady. "Can you open the garage when we get there?" Keanu asked, his brow furrowing. "Yeah," Luna said, a shaky breath following her words. "I'm bringing someone home. Please don't be mad. I couldn't leave him there." Keanu felt his heart clench. There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but he could hear the tremor under her words. She needed him to trust her. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll be waiting." When he hung up, he stood there for a moment, staring at the quiet kitchen. He thought about Luna, the softness in her eyes when she watched people, the way she noticed what others ignored. She'd always seen the world through a different lens, finding hidden stories in places most people overlooked. It made him proud but also scared him sometimes. Kindness could be a heavy thing to carry in a world that didn't always deserve it. 15 minutes later, headlights swung into the driveway. Keanu slipped on his old sneakers and walked out to the garage, pressing the button to lift the heavy door. Luna's small car rolled in slowly. He could see her in the driver's seat, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her hands gripping the steering wheel like she was bracing for something big. Beside her sat a boy. He looked no older than 16 or 17, thin, with shaggy hair that fell into his eyes and clothes that were too big and too worn. He stared straight ahead, shoulders tense, eyes darting around like a cornered animal. When Luna turned off the engine, there was a moment where no one moved. Then she opened her door, stepping out into the warm night air. "Dad," she said quietly, coming around to his side. "This is Finn." The boy slowly climbed out of the car, his shoes scuffing against the concrete. He kept his eyes down, shifting his weight like he might bolt at any second. "Hi, Finn," Keanu said, his voice calm, his hands loose at his sides. He didn't want to spook him. "I'm Luna's dad." Finn mumbled something that sounded like "Hi, sir," but his eyes stayed on the ground. Keanu looked at Luna. "Want to tell me what's going on?" Luna bit her lip, glancing at Finn before answering. "I found him behind the library, Dad. He was sleeping there. He hasn't eaten in days. He's just a kid. I couldn't leave him there." Keanu felt a swirl of emotions, fear, protectiveness, pride, all battling for space inside his chest. He looked at Finn again, taking in the bruises on his arms, the thinness of his frame, the way his backpack was falling apart at the seams. "Have you got anywhere to go, Finn?" Keanu asked gently. The boy shook his head, his voice barely audible. "No, sir." Keanu nodded slowly. He could feel the weight of what this meant, bringing a stranger into their home, inviting in a world of unknowns. But he also saw the way Luna stood, her eyes fierce and pleading, her hand hovering protectively near Finn's shoulder. She was telling him without words, "Dad, please trust me, okay?" Keanu said, his voice steady. "First things first, let's get you inside, get you something to eat, and a shower if you'd like one. You're safe here tonight, okay?" Finn looked up then, just for a second. His eyes were wide and tired, but there was a flicker of something there, disbelief, maybe hope. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. Keanu stepped aside, gesturing for them to come in. Luna gave him a small, grateful smile as she led Finn through the side door into the kitchen. Keanu followed, his mind racing. He knew this was only the beginning. There would be questions to answer, boundaries to figure out, maybe trouble waiting, just beyond the kindness of this moment. But he also knew what it felt like to stand on the edge of despair and have someone reach out a hand. They sat Finn down at the table while Luna rummaged through the fridge, pulling out leftovers and warming up soup on the stove. Finn sat perfectly still, his shoulders hunched like he was trying to make himself invisible. Keanu poured him a glass of water and set it gently in front of him. "You don't have to be scared here, Finn," he said quietly. "No one's going to ask you for anything tonight. Just eat, rest, we'll figure it out together." For the first time, Finn looked at him fully. There was so much in that look: exhaustion, fear, and something else buried deep, something fragile that hadn't given up yet. When the soup was ready, Luna placed the bowl in front of Finn. He hesitated, his hands shaking as he picked up the spoon. Then, like he couldn't hold back any longer, he ate, spoon after spoon disappearing as Luna and Keanu sat quietly, giving him space to feel human again. Keanu watched them, his daughter and this boy she'd brought home from the shadows, and felt a quiet ache in his chest. This was the world he'd tried to build for Luna, a place where kindness wasn't questioned, where broken things could come in and find warmth. But he also knew the real world wasn't always so gentle. He wondered what had driven Finn to that alley behind the library. What story was waiting in the dark corners of this boy's life? When Finn was done, Luna showed him to the guest room, a small space with a bed and a soft blanket. Nothing fancy, but warm enough. Keanu stood in the hallway as they passed, watching the boy's shoulders relax, just a fraction. As he stepped into the room, when Luna came back out, she looked at her dad, her eyes shining with questions she didn't yet know how to ask. "Did I do the right thing?" she whispered. Keanu pulled her into a hug, resting his chin on the top of her head. "You did what your heart told you to do, and I'm proud of you." They stood there in the hallway, father and daughter, listening to the house settle around them. Somewhere down that hallway, a boy who'd had nowhere to sleep was lying in a bed for the first time in who knows how long. There would be consequences. People might talk. Maybe they'd get it wrong. But right now, none of that mattered. In that small, quiet house, kindness had cracked the door open for hope to slip through. Keanu knew tomorrow would bring questions, conflict, maybe even pain. But tonight, a hungry boy was warm, and a young girl's heart had chosen compassion over fear. And sometimes, that was where everything good began. The sun rose slowly over the quiet street outside Keanu's house, casting a soft golden light through the hallway window. Keanu had barely slept. He lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sound that might mean trouble. But the house had stayed calm, just the gentle hum of the heater and the distant rustle of leaves brushing the window. He got up before the alarm, pulling on a soft flannel shirt and old jeans. He moved quietly down the hallway, careful not to wake Luna. When he passed the guest room, he paused. The door was open just a crack. Inside, Finn was curled up under the blanket, his backpack tucked tight against his chest like a shield. His face looked softer in sleep, younger somehow, stripped of the fear that clung to him the night before. Keanu stood there for a moment, watching the slow rise and fall of the boy's breathing. He wondered what dreams Finn was having, if they were haunted by old fears or if, for one night at least, he was dreaming of something gentle. He thought of his own childhood, the nights he'd spent awake worrying about things that felt too big to carry. He knew that look, the way your whole body tensed up, ready to run at the slightest sound. In the kitchen, Keanu started the coffee machine. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room, mixing with the soft early morning light. He pulled out a pan and cracked a few eggs, adding cheese and some herbs, hoping the warm food might make the morning feel less harsh for Finn. He wanted the boy to know that this wasn't a one-night pity stop. He wanted him to feel, even just for a moment, that this house could be a place where he was safe. A few minutes later, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned to see Luna standing there, wrapped in an old blanket, her hair messy from sleep. Her eyes were puffy, but she gave him a small smile. "Morning, Dad," she said, her voice still rough from sleep. Morning, sweetheart. Keanu said, pouring her a cup of coffee. He added just a splash of milk the way she liked it and handed it to her. "Is he awake?" Luna asked, her eyes flicking toward the hallway. "Not yet," Keanu said, "but he will be soon. I'm making breakfast." Luna pulled herself up onto one of the stools at the kitchen island, hugging her mug in both hands. "Do you think he'll stay?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost afraid to hope. Keanu paused at the stove, the eggs sizzling softly. "I don't know, but we can make sure he knows he can, if he wants to." They ate together in a comfortable silence, both of them glancing at the hallway every so often. It was Luna who heard it first, the soft shuffle of feet. She turned and saw Finn standing there, half hidden behind the doorframe. He looked so small, shoulders hunched, his eyes darting between them like he wasn't sure he was really allowed to be there. "Hey, Finn," Luna said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Come on in. Dad made eggs." Finn hesitated for a second, then stepped into the kitchen. He held his backpack tight in front of him, like he was afraid someone might snatch it away. Keanu noticed how the straps were frayed, the zipper barely holding on. He made a mental note to find him a new one. "Morning, Finn," Keanu said, keeping his tone light. "You hungry?" Finn nodded, eyes still down. Keanu fixed him a plate and set it on the table. He poured a glass of orange juice, sliding it across. Finn sat slowly, shoulders tense, but the smell of the warm food made his eyes widen a bit. "Thank you," Finn mumbled. It was so quiet that Keanu almost didn't hear it. Luna reached over and gave his hand a gentle squeeze before pulling back. Not wanting to scare him, "You don't have to thank us. We're just glad you're here." They ate like that, three people from different worlds, sitting together at an old wooden table while the sun rose higher outside the window. Finn ate slowly at first, like he didn't trust that the food wouldn't disappear if he didn't guard it. Keanu and Luna kept the conversation light. School, movies, the funny story about how Luna had once tried to cook pancakes and nearly burned down the kitchen. They laughed, and after a while, Finn's shoulders dropped just a little. When the plates were cleared, Keanu leaned back in his chair, studying the boy. "Finn, I know this is a lot," he said gently, "and I know you probably don't want to talk about it yet, but whenever you're ready, you can tell me what's going on. No pressure, no judgment." Finn's eyes flicked up to meet his for a second, just a flash of trust, or maybe surprise that anyone would ask without demanding. "Okay," Finn said softly. Keanu stood and rinsed the dishes, letting Luna lead Finn to the living room. She pulled out an old box of board games, trying to make him feel like a regular kid instead of someone who'd slept in an alley the day before. Keanu watched them from the kitchen doorway, Luna's laughter floating back to him as she teased Finn about cheating at cards. Finn even smiled once, a small, crooked thing that broke Keanu's heart and healed it at the same time. Later that morning, while Luna ran upstairs to grab some clean clothes for Finn, Keanu found him sitting alone on the edge of the couch. Finn was staring at his shoes, his fingers picking at a loose thread on the sleeve of his hoodie. "You okay?" Keanu asked, sitting across from him. Finn shrugged. I don't want to be trouble." Keanu leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You're not trouble, Finn. You're a kid who deserves to feel safe. You didn't do anything wrong by needing help." Finn's eyes filled with something that looked a lot like tears, but he blinked them away so fast that Keanu pretended not to notice. They sat there in the quiet for a while, no big speeches, no promises he couldn't keep, just two people, one trying to trust, the other trying to be worthy of that trust. When Luna came back down with clean clothes, an old hoodie of hers and some sweatpants that might fit, Finn held them to his chest like they were made of gold. Keanu told him he could take a shower if he wanted, and the boy nodded, disappearing down the hall. Keanu looked at Luna. "You did good, kiddo." She smiled, but he could see the worry behind her eyes. "What if he doesn't want to stay?" Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we make sure he knows he has a choice, and we help him find something better. But for now, he knows he's not alone." And that was all they could do. He thought, keep the door open, keep the light on, and hope that sometimes that was enough to remind someone lost in the dark that they could still find their way home. That afternoon the house felt different. It wasn't the furniture or the quiet hum of music Luna had turned on in the background. It was something softer, deeper, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting to see if this fragile trust could last more than a single night. After his shower, Finn emerged wearing Luna's old hoodie and sweatpants that were a bit too big, but they were clean and smelled like lavender detergent. He looked less guarded somehow, his hair damp and pushed away from his eyes. He didn't make much noise as he sat back down on the couch, legs tucked under him like he might need to run at any moment. Keanu noticed all the small signs. The way Finn flinched when a loud truck rumbled past outside, the way he kept his backpack within arm's reach. Luna sat close by, cross-legged on the floor, dealing out a deck of playing cards she'd dug up from a kitchen drawer. "Ever play Crazy Eights?" she asked, raising an eyebrow at Finn. He shrugged. "Maybe, don't remember." "Good," she said, grinning. "I'll teach you. But fair warning, I'm ruthless." Keanu sat in the armchair nearby, pretending to read but really just watching them. Luna made a show of explaining the rules, her hands moving dramatically, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Finn listened, a small grin twitching at the corners of his mouth when she accused him of cheating, even though he hadn't. For a moment, it was like he was just a normal teenager, not a boy who'd been sleeping behind a library to nights. After a few games, Luna got up to make popcorn, leaving Keanu and Finn alone. The quiet settled between them, comfortable but fragile. Keanu closed his book and leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Finn," he said gently, "can I ask you something?" Finn's eyes darted to the front door, then back to Keanu, like he was weighing whether he could run if he needed to. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready for," Keanu said, his voice steady. "But I need to know if there's someone out there looking for you. Parents, family?" Finn's shoulders tensed. He looked down at the frayed hem of his hoodie sleeve, picking at a loose thread. "No," he said after a moment. "No one's looking." Keanu let the words sink in. There was a finality in Finn's voice that hit him in the chest. He wanted to ask more. Where had he been sleeping before the library? Why did he run? What had he been running from? But the boys' eyes said enough. The details could come later. What mattered now was that he knew, without a doubt, that no one was coming for him. And no one had been for a long time. "Okay," Keanu said, nodding slowly. "Well, you're here now. And you're safe here. Do you believe me?" Finn's eyes met his, and for a split second, Keanu saw it, the ghost of a question. "Can I really trust you?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he nodded once, then quickly looked away, tucking his legs in tighter. Luna came back with a big bowl of popcorn, flopping down next to Finn and shoving it into his lap. "New house rule," she announced. "No one's allowed to be sad while eating popcorn." Finn let out a tiny laugh, so quiet Keanu almost missed it. But he didn't. He stored it away like a small treasure, a sign that the wall around the boy's heart had one tiny crack in it now. By evening, the three of them found themselves sitting at the dinner table again. Keanu had ordered pizza because it felt easier than trying to cook. He wanted the night to feel normal, casual, like they were just a family having a lazy Friday dinner. Finn ate quietly, listening as Luna rambled on about a book she was reading for school and how her English teacher gave her detention once for correcting his grammar. Every now and then, Finn's eyes would flick to Keanu, like he was still trying to figure him out. But he didn't look ready to run anymore. That was enough for now. After dinner, Luna went upstairs to finish homework. Keanu stayed in the kitchen with Finn, both of them rinsing off plates. It was a simple thing, but Keanu knew the boy needed it, the feeling of doing something normal, something ordinary. Not a charity case, not a problem to fix, just a kid helping with dishes after dinner. When they finished, Keanu poured 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to Finn and gestured toward the back porch. The evening air was cool and gentle, the city lights blinking in the distance like scattered fireflies. They sat together in the quiet. Keanu sipped his tea, watching the steam curl up into the night sky. "You remind me of me when I was your age," Keanu said after a while. Finn shifted beside him, pulling his knees to his chest. I didn't have much, Keanu continued. Moved around a lot. Felt like I was always waiting for the next thing to go wrong. I learned early that people don't always keep their promises. But I also learned that sometimes, just sometimes, you find people who do. Finn didn't say anything, but his shoulders relaxed just a little. He sipped his tea, his eyes fixed on the stars. You don't have to decide anything tonight, Keanu said softly. If you want to stay a while, you can. If you want help finding somewhere else, I'll help you. But whatever you choose, you don't have to do it alone. The boy looked at him then, really looked, and Keanu saw it, the fear, the exhaustion. But under it, a fragile hope that hadn't died yet. He knew that hope needed space to grow. He couldn't force it, couldn't fix everything overnight, but he could be here. He could keep the porch light on. After a long silence, Finn spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Can I stay tonight? Keanu felt a lump rise in his throat. He kept his voice steady. Of course, Finn. As long as you want. Inside, Luna peeked through the glass door, watching her dad and the boy under the stars. She didn't interrupt. She knew they were building something important out there, something that couldn't be rushed or explained in fancy words. Keanu leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the night settle around them. It wasn't a fix, it wasn't the end of the story, but it was a start, and sometimes that was enough to change everything. The next few days felt like walking on thin ice. Gentle steps, careful words, small moments that could shatter or grow trust depending on how they were handled. Keanu knew this, so he let Finn set the pace. He didn't push him to talk about what happened before Luna found him. He didn't push him to act like he belonged. He just made sure the boy knew the door was always open, the food was always there, and no one would ask for anything in return. Each morning, Luna would wake up early to make breakfast before school, insisting on showing Finn how to make scrambled eggs without burning the pan. Sometimes they laughed when they ruined it. Sometimes they sat in silence, the only sound the scrape of forks on plates. It didn't matter. The silence was soft now, not sharp like it was that first night, that one Wednesday afternoon. Keanu came home from a meeting to find Luna and Finn sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by old board games and empty snack wrappers. They were playing chess, but it was clear neither really knew the rules. The board was a mess, but they didn't care. So who's winning? Keanu asked, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. Luna cheats, Finn said, the corner of his mouth twitching into a shy grin. Lies, Luna shot back, tossing a chess piece at him. He's just mad because I took his queen with a knight. That's not even a legal move. Finn muttered. Keanu watched them for a moment, a soft warmth spreading through his chest. He couldn't remember the last time his house felt like this, like laughter and hope were stitched into the walls. Later that night, after Luna had gone to bed, Finn sat on the couch flipping through channels with the remote. Keanu came in and dropped down beside him, 2 mugs of hot chocolate balanced. In one hand, he handed one to Finn, who looked surprised but accepted it. You ever watch old movies? Keanu asked, picking up the remote. Finn shrugged. Not really. Didn't have a TV most places I stayed. Keanu tried to keep his face calm, but inside, his heart cracked a little at the way Finn said most places I stayed, like he was talking about bus stops and alleys instead of homes. Well, Keanu said, clicking to an old black and white film. This one's a classic. My sister used to make me watch it every New Year's Eve. They sat there in the soft glow of the TV, sipping chocolate, the shadows on the wall dancing with the flicker of the movie. Halfway through, Finn's eyes began to close. His head dipped once, twice. Keanu quietly grabbed a blanket from the back of the couch and draped it over his shoulders. You can sleep here if you want, he whispered. Finn mumbled something that sounded like thanks, but his eyes didn't open again. Keanu watched him for a long time. There was something both heartbreaking and beautiful about seeing this boy, who had been so afraid, finally drifting into sleep on a warm couch. The faint sound of old movie dialogue in the background. He knew this was just the surface, that underneath, there were stories that would take time to come out. But this moment felt like a promise, a tiny seed that maybe, just maybe, things could grow here. The next day, the first crack in the fragile trust appeared. Keanu was in his study when he heard raised voices. He stepped out into the hallway and saw Luna standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, her face red with anger. Finn stood near the door, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "Luna?" Keanu asked. Carefully, she turned to him, her voice trembling. "He's trying to leave. He says he doesn't want to be a problem." "Dad, tell him." Finn flinched at her words, his fingers clutching the frayed strap of his bag. "I don't belong here," he said, his voice low, words spilling out like they'd been waiting to break free. "You're nice to me, but I'm not family. I don't want to mess things up for you." Keanu stepped closer, hands open, his voice soft. "You're not messing anything up, Finn." "Yes, I am." Finn's voice cracked, a raw edge slipping through. "People don't keep me. They don't want to. I can't do this. It hurts too much when they leave." The words cut through Keanu like a knife. He could see Luna's eyes fill with tears, but she didn't speak. She knew this was Keanu's moment to reach him. He took another step closer, closing the space between them. "Finn, listen to me. We're not trying to keep you like a pet or a project. We want you here because you matter. You're not invisible here. Not to Luna, not to me." Finn shook his head, his breathing ragged. "I'm not your kid." "No, you're not," Keanu said gently. "But you're someone's kid, and you deserve to be treated like one. You deserve to eat at a table and sleep in a warm bed, and wake up knowing there's breakfast waiting for you. You deserve that even if you don't stay." Finn's eyes filled with tears he couldn't blink away this time. They rolled down his cheeks, silent and quick. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do you care?" Keanu felt his own eyes sting. He reached out slowly, resting a hand on Finn's shoulder. "Because someone cared for me when I didn't think I was worth it. And because my daughter saw you when others looked away. That makes you family. Even if just for a while." Luna stepped forward then, her arms wrapping around Finn from the side. She pressed her forehead to his arm, and they stood there. Three people tied together by a kindness that was messy and imperfect but real. After a few moments, Finn dropped his backpack on the floor. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. His body leaning into theirs said enough. That night, after Luna went to bed, Keanu found Finn sitting on the back porch steps again. He joined him, to steaming mugs of tea in hand. They sat in the silence for a long time, the stars blinking overhead like tiny promises. "You don't have to stay forever," Keanu said quietly. "But while you're here, you'll never be alone. Not one more night." Finn didn't speak, but when he leaned his head against Keanu's shoulder, just for a moment, it was enough. It was everything. Sometimes family wasn't blood. Sometimes it was a choice you made over and over to keep the door open for the broken pieces that needed a place to heal. And sometimes that was where love began. Days turned into a week, then another. Each morning brought something new, a small test, a quiet victory, a crack in Finn's armor that showed a glimpse of the boy he might have been if life had been kinder. For Keanu, every day was a balancing act between giving Finn space and showing him, again and again, that this home would not turn its back on him. Some mornings Finn would wake up early, standing awkwardly in the kitchen, hovering near Luna as she made eggs. Other mornings, Keanu would find him curled up on the couch, his backpack hugged tight to his chest like a life raft. They never forced him to explain his moods. Instead, they showed him with small things that he didn't need to fear the silence. One Saturday afternoon, Luna sat on the living room floor, flipping through a dusty old photo album. Finn was stretched out on his stomach nearby, doodling on a scrap of paper. Keanu watched from the armchair as Luna pointed to pictures, old movie premieres, grainy snapshots of him on set, candid photos of him and her mom long before she was born. "That's my favorite," Luna said, tapping a photo of Keanu sitting cross-legged in a garden, a tiny Luna perched on his shoulders. "He used to take me there every Sunday. We'd sit for hours. I'd ask him a million questions. He never got tired of answering." Finn peeked at the photo, then looked at Keanu. "You don't look that different," he said, almost shy. Keanu laughed softly. "Must be the beard hiding all the gray hairs." Luna looked at Finn, her voice gentle. Do you have any pictures? Finn froze, the pencil slipping from his fingers. His eyes dropped to the carpet, his shoulders curling in like he was trying to disappear. Sorry, Luna said quickly. You don't have to answer that. Keanu wanted to reach out, to tell him it was okay. Instead, he let the quiet fill the space. Sometimes silence was its own kind of kindness. That night, after Luna had gone to bed, Keanu found Finn standing alone on the back porch. The boy was staring out at the dark yard, his breath misting in the cold night air. Can't sleep? Keanu asked, stepping out beside him. Finn shrugged. Too many thoughts. They stood there in the darkness, the night wrapping around them like an old blanket. When I was your age, Keanu said, I used to sneak out and sit under the stars. Felt like the only place big enough for my questions. Finn glanced at him, then looked back at the sky. You ever feel like you're too broken to fix? The words were so soft that they almost blew away with the wind. But Keanu caught them. He let them sit between them, heavy and honest. Yeah, Keanu said finally. More times than I can count. Finn swallowed, his eyes shining with something that looked like grief mixed with hope. What did you do? Keanu thought of all. The nights he'd spent alone, the mistakes he'd made, the people he'd lost. He thought of how each scar had taught him that the heart could keep beating, even when you were sure it couldn't. I let people help me, Keanu said. Even when it scared me, even when I didn't feel like I deserved it, I let them love me anyway. Finn looked down at his hands, twisting his fingers together. What if they leave? Keanu placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Some will, but not everyone. You just have to hold on until you find the ones who stay. They stood there until the cold seeped into their bones. When they finally went inside, Keanu watched Finn disappear down the hallway to the guest room. But this time, he left his backpack by the couch. It was a small thing, but Keanu saw it for what it was, a sign that maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe this place would still be here in the morning. The next day, Luna convinced Finn to come with her to the local community center where she volunteered on weekends. She had been teaching art to younger kids, letting them paint messy, colorful things that ended up all over the walls. Finn hesitated at first, standing by the door with his hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. But the kids didn't care. They swarmed him with curious questions and shy smiles. Keanu showed up later to pick them up and found Finn sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by toddlers who were all trying to show him their drawings. His eyes were wide, but there was a softness in his grin that made Keanu's chest ache with hope. You're good with them, Keanu said as they walked to the car afterward. Finn shrugged, his cheeks pink. They don't judge me. They don't know what I am. Keanu paused by the car door. And what do you think you are? Finn opened his mouth, then closed it again, staring at his scuffed shoes. I don't know, not sure yet. Keanu placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. That's okay, you're still figuring it out. But here's what I see. I see a kid who makes my daughter laugh. I see someone who's brave enough to let people care about him. I see a good kid, Finn. Even if you can't see it yet. Finn looked up, his eyes glassy but bright. He didn't answer, but the tiny smile tugging at the corner of his mouth said more than words could. That night, the three of them watched an old movie on the couch, Luna curled up under a blanket, Finn wedged between her and Keanu. Halfway through, Luna dozed off, her head resting on Finn's shoulder. He sat frozen for a second, like he was scared to move and ruin it. Keanu reached over and nudged him playfully. It's okay, he whispered. She drools sometimes. Finn let out a soft laugh, muffled but real. And in that small, quiet moment, Keanu realized something. This boy, this stranger they'd found behind a library, had carved out a place in their home that felt like it had always been waiting for him. Maybe he wouldn't stay forever. Maybe one day he'd leave to find his own way. But right now, he was here, warm, safe, and, for the first time in who knew how long, not alone. Asterisk weeks passed gently, like pages turning in a book they all wanted to read slowly, so nothing would slip away too fast. Spring settled over the neighborhood, warm breezes carrying the smell of blooming flowers through open windows. In that house, laughter became more common than silence. and the old fears that used to cling to Finn like shadows began to loosen their grip. Keanu watched the changes unfold in the small, ordinary moments. He saw it when Finn started leaving his backpack in the guest room instead of by the door, as if he trusted it would still be there in the morning. He saw it when Luna and Finn came home from the community center covered in paint and glitter, both pretending they weren't secretly proud of the kids' messy masterpieces taped to the fridge. He saw it in how Finn's shoulders relaxed when he sat at the dinner table, how he no longer held his fork like it might be taken away at any moment. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in soft purples and oranges, Keanu and Finn stood on the back porch again. It had become their unspoken ritual, a quiet time when words came easier than in the daylight. Finn leaned against the railing, his hands stuffed into the pockets of an old hoodie that Luna had all but claimed as his. He stared out at the darkening yard, chewing on his bottom lip like he was wrestling with something big. "You okay?" Keanu asked, sipping his tea. Finn didn't answer right away. He kicked at a loose board on the porch, the wood creaking softly. "I've been thinking," he said finally, his voice barely louder than the breeze, "about maybe going back to school." Keanu felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but with a cautious hope that he didn't want to scare away. "That's good, Finn. That's really good." Finn shrugged, still staring out into the dusk. "I'm behind, like, really behind. I don't know if they'll even let me back in." "Then we'll find a way," Keanu said, his voice calm and certain. "There are programs for kids who've had to leave school for a while. You won't do it alone. I'll help you, Luna will too." Finn looked at him then, really looked, like he was searching for the lie that had always come before the hurt, but he didn't find it. Instead, he nodded once, pressing his lips together to keep them from trembling. "Okay," he whispered. A few days later, they sat together in the principal's office of a small alternative high school downtown. Luna came too, insisting on missing her own classes just to sit by Finn's side. She held his hand under the table while Keanu explained, carefully but honestly, how they'd found him, how he'd been living, and how much he wanted a chance to finish school. The principal, a kind woman with silver hair and kind eyes, asked Finn questions about what he liked, what he struggled with, what he dreamed about, questions that made him shift and fidget, but he answered them all. At the end, she looked at him and said, "We can work with this, Finn, but you have to promise you won't disappear again." Finn swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around Luna's. "I won't," he said, his voice firm in a way that made Keanu's eyes sting. "I don't want to disappear anymore." The next weeks were busy in a new way. Luna helped Finn pick out second-hand clothes that fit him better, jeans without holes, shirts that didn't swallow his thin frame. Keanu took him to get a proper backpack, letting him choose whatever color he wanted. Finn picked dark blue because, as he shyly told Luna later, it looked like the sky just before the sun came up. The night before his first day back, Finn paced the hallway, his nerves a raw thing he couldn't hide. Keanu found him sitting on the couch, his backpack hugged to his chest like an old habit. "Nervous?" Keanu asked, dropping down beside him. Finn didn't answer at first. Then he nodded. "What if they look at me like I'm trash? What if they know where I've been?" Keanu rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then they'll know you're stronger than you look. And if they don't see that, that's on them, not you." Finn let out a shaky breath. "What if I can't do it?" "You won't have to do it alone," Keanu said. "You've got me. You've got Luna. We're not going anywhere." Finn didn't say anything more. He just leaned into Keanu's side, his small, quiet weight pressing into the man who had become more than just a safe place. He had become proof that not all people leave. The first day of school came with its own hard moments. Luna insisted on walking him to the gate, ignoring his protests that it made him look like a baby. She squeezed his hand, whispered something that made him laugh despite the fear in his eyes. When he came home that afternoon, his shoulders were tense, but his eyes were bright. He dropped his new backpack by the door, not in his room, not clutched tight to his chest, and told Keanu about the kid who sat next to him in math, and how the teacher didn't make him introduce himself in front of everyone. It was just normal, And normal felt like a small miracle. Months slipped by like that. School days, dinners, quiet nights on the porch. Sometimes the darkness still came for Finn. He'd wake up from nightmares, gasping for breath, his mind stuck in places he didn't want to talk about yet. On those nights, Keanu would sit with him in the hallway or on the back porch, no questions. Just the steady presence of someone who wasn't going to disappear. Luna started calling him her brother, slipping the word into sentences like it was always meant to be there. At first, Finn would flinch, but one day, he said it back, not to her face, just under his breath when she handed him a bowl of popcorn. But she heard it, and Keanu, watching from the kitchen, felt something deep inside him settle into place. One warm evening, nearly a year after that first night in the garage, Keanu found a note taped to his bedroom door. It was Finn's handwriting, messy but careful. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I had nothing to give back. Thank you for letting me stay even when I didn't believe I deserved it. You and Luna made me feel like I could be more than where I came from. I hope I can be that for someone else one day too." Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, the note clutched tight in his hands. He thought about how easy it would have been to say no that first night, to close the garage door, to keep their world safe and small. He thought about Luna's eyes, so full of stubborn hope, and how she'd seen something worth saving when others would have walked by. Sometimes kindness was messy. Sometimes it cost you comfort and sleep and certainty. But sometimes it built a bridge strong enough for someone to walk back into the world. Outside his window, the stars blinked gently above the quiet house. Inside, a boy who once believed he wasn't worth keeping was curled up in a bed that would still be there for him tomorrow. And for Keanu, that was everything.